Hey everyone, it's Leanne. Welcome to another video at my YouTube channel. I'm going to show you how I made the Lawn Fawn Fairy Friends birthday card. So to begin, I'm setting up my template that will help me create the background of my card. I'm using a circle die cut template just to create the negative shape that I'll use to do the inking inside of, just to mask that off on my card. So once I have the template set up, I've put some post-it tape to hold the die in place, and that has low adhesion so it won't leave a sticky mess on my artwork, but it holds the die in place as I run it through the die cutting machine. Now when this is done, I will also have the inside part of the circle, which I won't be using today, but I will save that for another project because that's also a good piece to keep. So I just pop that out easily, and I have my template ready. I also want to add a hillside to my template as well for the fairy. So I'm using the Lawn Fawn Meadow Borders template, and I'm just measuring out, sort of eyeballing how much space I need to leave for the grass, and I'm just going to trim off what I need from this cardstock here. To do this, I'm also going to use my ruler and X-Acto knife. This is the way I learned in design school. I know I've mentioned this in other videos. It makes a nice straight cut, and I always have these tools handy. So instead of picking up scissors, I always use an X-Acto knife. Scissors can really dull paper as well, whereas an X-Acto knife, it's easy to change out the blade, and I always have a nice sharp edge to work with. So now I'm just setting up the die for the hillside part of my template and positioning that, and I'm also using some post-it tape to hold that die down. And then when I run that through the machine, it'll stay in place and create the nice die cut that I need in the position that I've placed it in. So here I've got the die cut already, and I've positioned the grass to where I feel that I would like it to cut out of the circle at the bottom. So I'm creating a negative shape with the grass. And what I will do is do a sky background in the inner part of the circle, like you see that where the desk is showing through. So once I've got the grass positioned where I want it, I'm just going to tape that down. And then I will put this on top of my card and make sure everything's centered once again, and just get it set up so that I can do my inking and my blending. So with this, it was very close to perfect. It wasn't 100%, so I had to shift it a little bit. I don't know if you can really notice, but I've got it all set up the way I want, and I'm just going to tack down the sides with some post-it tape to hold it in place. Ideally, it would be nice to use a masking tape. I know that you can buy masking pages that are sticky pages, and you can do a die cut like I've done, and it will stick down on all edges. I don't have any of that, so I sort of had to improvise by creating the paper template that I did. So the two colors that I'm using here are color box stamps and ink pads, and I will leave the name in the description below. One is called Surf and one is called Robin's Egg. So with the dabbers, I'm just going to begin with the Robin's Egg and lay down my first light coat of color. To create the illusion of a sky, usually it's lightest at the horizon line, and then as you get up higher in the sky, it gets darker. So I want my darkest part to be on the top and outer edges of the circle. So I'm adding the ink there first because I can always blend out from there. And the Robin's Egg is the lightest color, and so I don't want to start with my darkest color first. I want to slowly build up that color just to be on the safe side and make sure that I don't add too much at once and not be able to blend it out. And I also want to create the negative shape of the grass, so I'm doing a bit on the horizon line just so that I can get the illusion of the hillside. Seeing as how that's going to be a negative shape, I want to make sure that it is showing through on the card. I find it's best to work in circles as well, so when you're applying the ink, if you do small swirls and circles, I find that you don't get the streaks as much, and the ink sort of blends out nicely. You don't get hard lines in the ink. And this ink is pretty good to work with. It dries not as fast as typical ink pads do, so you get a little bit of time to play and push around the ink if you have some spots that you're not quite happy with. After you've laid down the ink and you've had a chance to take a look, You just get a little extra time to work with it and make it look a little bit better. So I'm keeping the lightest part towards the center. If I didn't have the grass line and wanted to do a true horizon, then I wouldn't have put ink at all near the bottom, but I did want to make sure that the negative shape of the grass was there. So just lightly I've put it in that spot, but I've kept it lighter towards the center. And now I'm going to go in with the surf color, and I don't want to put too much of this on because it does come out quite a bit darker and it is a stronger pigment. So I'm just going to put that around the top and outer edges very softly. And with this one, you'll notice that I only had to dab in once. A little goes a long way with this color, and so I didn't want to overwhelm the circle or overdo it. I wanted to keep the gradient really prominent. So I'll go back in with my dauber that I used to create the robin's egg, and I'll just blend into the surf, the darker blue, just to get the tones mixing a little bit better, and so I don't have any hard, harsh edges. So now comes the fun part. We get to remove the dye and see how the blending looks. And I'm pretty happy with this. I thought it looked really good. So now I'm going to take some fairies. I've already stamped these, and so I've already colored them as well with Copic colors. I will put the colors that I used in the description below for the Copic markers. I'm just going to cut these out. Now, typically I would use a die cut and put these through my die cutting machine, but unfortunately I did not have the die cut for this set, so I have to cut them out by hand. And I use my X-Acto knife to do that. I know a lot of people call them fussy cutting and they cut them with scissors. I don't like cutting with scissors because I find as I'm cutting around little arms and legs and things, those get bent, and so I lay it on my cutting mat and I use my X-Acto knife and cut it out that way. It's a little bit longer to do, but it comes out very clean and I really like the result. So here I'm just putting two-way tape on the elements. I've sort of positioned where I want things to go. And so I'm just going to put down the mushroom house first, or the flower house. I had a little bit of room at the bottom. I'm going to put the sentiment at the bottom, but I have only a one-line sentiment. I had a little bit of white space, so I decided to bring the flower house down into the white space more, just to help break up that division and to bleed the image down into the space and take up some of the white, because I did have a lot of white space left over. If I was to do this again, I'd probably position the circle a little bit lower on the page, but everything worked out okay with the way I did it. So now I'm just adding the cute little flowers. And then I didn't want to add too many elements to this card because I do want to keep it simple and classy, but I felt that there was an empty space on the left. So what I decided to do was look at some elements that I could use from the stamp set to fill up that space and use the darker surf colored blue in the stamp set. So something sort of recessed in the background, but something to still add interest and fill up that area. So I used the tendrils from the stamp set, from the Fairy and Friends stamp set. And these filled in the space really well, and I found it added a little bit of whimsy to it. So it was a nice addition without adding too many elements and cluttering up the image overall. Here I'm just going to position the fairy where I want her to go. I don't want her too close to the tendrils, but I want to make sure that she's off to the left and not dead center. And then I'm just setting up the wand here. So I used two-way tape and I put it on the back, and here you'll see me trimming the two-way tape. So where it came out over the edge, it's really hard to cut with scissors and cut that two-way tape really small. So I just trimmed it off with the X-Acto knife, and I had a nice clean, perfect edge on the tape that was on the back, and I was able to stick that down. There's also some stars or twinkles in the fairy set, in the stamp set, so I decided to add those around the wand and around the fairy just to fill in the space in the upper right as well, because it felt a little empty to me as well. So I just added that there. And now, because this is a circular image, I decided to take the sentiment and wrap it around the bottom of the circle just to keep that harmonious balance going with everything being contained in a circle like that. And because it's one line, it's really easy to work with this stamp and bend it and make it fit. So laying my block over here, my acrylic block, I can test and make sure that it's at the right angle and it's the right height and it's even and it's just as I like it. And then I've stamped this with Memento Tuxedo Black ink, and I'm just putting the sentiment down. Sometimes if you don't overdo it on the cards, they turn out really nice. Sometimes a little is a lot. And this one I found, it was pretty basic and easy to make, but it came out really pretty, and I'm really happy with the way it turned out. So I decided to add some green sequins at the end just to give a little bit more bling and to help add direction with the eye movement as well. So when you first look at the card, you look at the fairy first, and then your eye starts in the top left, and then it continues through the image down to the bottom right, which leads you into opening the card. So I've just put some white glue, craft glue, on a scrap piece of paper, and I pick the sequins up with my X-Acto knife, just dabbing a little bit of glue on the back of those to keep those in place. Now I'm going to tape my card down to the front of my cardstock that's already set up folded in an A2 size for the card. So I'm just using a glue roller for the back of that, and then getting this all lined up and ready to go. And there we have it. So this is the card I created with the Lawn Fawn Fairy Friends set. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, please give a thumbs up and leave comments as well if you have any thoughts or questions in the comments below. And be sure to subscribe as well so you can be notified as I post more videos. Thank you so much for watching.